Howdy folks, Congo here, back with another episode of Simple Guide. And in this episode, we'll be talking about the Enterprise. This is another Tier 8 American premium aircraft carrier. We'll be going over modules, peculiarities of the aircraft, commander skills, signals, and then taking it out into a random battle to show you how I would play it. Alright, so starting with the peculiarities of the ship in the aircraft. First thing, these aircraft are all Tier 8, so they're at tier. You have HVARs, the standard 5-inch HVARs. These are the upgraded or the stock and or upgraded type of aircraft that you get on the Lexington and the stock, the first upgrade you get on the Midway. So they're the lot of rockets, mediocre damage, generally what you use nowadays. Then you have the torpedo bombers. These are pretty standard American torps. They're slow, they hit pretty decent flood chance. They're overall pretty average. For the Enterprise, these will be the main source or the lion's share of your damage. And then finally, the dive bombers. Now, unlike other American carriers that we've covered in this guide, the Enterprise dive bombers are armor piercing. This means that they can citadel ships. And this is kind of a double-edged sword in that they can do a lot of damage, more than the high explosive, but only against situational targets. You can't just drop them on anyone you want. Mostly cruisers and battleships, and even then, only certain cruisers and certain battleships are actually incredibly vulnerable to the AP dive bombers. And other targets, you'll get some pens, but not necessarily citadels. So they're a bit of a finicky beast. In terms of upgrades, I am using Standard 2, Air Grips Modification 1, and Aircraft Engines Modification 1. For Slot 3, I am still using Aerial Torpedo Modification 1. Again, American Torps, very slow. 35 knots base, so boosting that up to 37 is just super useful. In the fourth slot, I am using Torpedo Bomber Modification 2. The torpedo bombers are the main source of damage on the Enterprise. The armor-piercing bombs are situational, as I've mentioned before, and are also armor-piercing. So you can't kind of do that fire flood like you can on most of the other carriers in the American line. The only real dots you have are floods from your torpedo bombers and fires from your rockets, and the fire rocket chance is 7%. So it's not very high. So torpedo bombers, more HP, they're the most of your damage for the most part. And then concealment systems. This is again another personal preference module. I prefer concealment. This brings my concealment down to a very somewhat comfortable 12.7 kilometers. It's enough that I have enough time to react to being spotted by a destroyer, but it is small enough that I can still push close to the front lines and reduce my plane turnaround time by a considerable amount. One of the other peculiarities I should mention about the Enterprise is her fighters. Her fighters have 10 in a group, as opposed to everybody else, who I believe it is only 5 at this tier. Let me just check the Lexington. Yes, it's only 5. So the Enterprise has huge fighter groups. This means that it will shred basically the entire squadron of everybody else. The only 3 exceptions to this rule are Enterprise's own rocket planes and the Kaga's torpedo and dive bombers. They will live with about 3 to 4 planes after the fighter attacks, assuming it's a full-strength squad. Everybody else has less than 10 aircraft, or has 10, and they will lose the whole strike. So this means that your fighters are brutally effective. They also have a larger action range. Little bit larger action range, so this means they cover a huge area as well. So that's just something to keep in mind. As for commander skills, it's somewhat similar to my Lexington builds. The only difference is that I also have proxy fuse, so I have air supremacy, improved engines, swift fish, aircraft armor, survivability expert, proxy fuse, and then I have enhanced reactions, and then finally I would take search and destroy and improved engine boost. This is a special commander for the Enterprise, specifically, because you don't have high explosive dive bombers. Bomber flight control is not as useful, so having proxy fuse just means that when your torps do hit the torpedo protection, they do a bit more damage. Because with the Enterprise, you're not specifically aiming for the bow like you would be with the other carriers, because floods are a bonus. They are not to force repairs, because you have nothing to follow up with them. And then enhanced reactions, this is just to follow up on your fighters, how strong their fighters are. In this kind of setup, this is what I was using in Bronze League rank with the Lexington build that I showcased in my Lexington guide. These two carriers with these builds are what I was running there. And it was exceptionally effective, especially this build. This Enterprise build in ranked is brutal. The combination of massive fighter wave and massive circle with enhanced reactions mean that if an enemy carrier enters the circle for just a few seconds and get locked on, they lose all of those planes, and it's rough. As for signals, I am using couple specials, XP and Commander XP, just to get my commander up some more. Heal flag and then flood flag. This isn't really so much to force repairs like on other carriers, so this isn't as important. You could take November Foxtrot, the consumable recharge, if you wanted. I just like the flood flag because floods are nice. They're pretty brutal damage over time effect, on top of the fact that they slow the opponent, meaning it's easier for you to hit them with an additional torp set. So if you come in with a full wave and you hit a target and they flood, and then you turn around and hit them again, it's easier to hit that second strike if they're flooding because they're slower, and your torps are very slow, so it's a lot easier to hit a second strike. And if they repair it, then you have that chance of getting a second perma-flood. A second flood, and therefore a perma-flood. Alright, so let's see. Probably be bottom tier. That's pretty par for the course as a tier 8 carrier. Yep. Sounds about right. Tier 10 matchmaking. We're against another Enterprise, so it's a mirror match in the carrier department. In terms of battleship AA, nothing too scary. Alsace is alright, Friedrich is meh, Marco has good short range, but that's about it. Same with Venezia. Zaus is bad, Amalfi's is bad, Talons is long range, and the destroyers are just kind of there. None of the destroyers really have incredibly powerful AA, maybe Lo Yang, but that's about it. Yugamo, Z, and Asashio don't really scare me. Their AA is actually fairly bad for a destroyer, and they have nothing to bolster it. Like, Lo Yang could have defensive fire. She'd have to trade her speed boost, much like Benson and Fletcher could. And Hearing, but it's unlikely she does, so I'm not too worried about her. So we're going to go spot A side. Asashio and Nevsky are on A side. We have an Austin and a Kitakaze in mid section. So I'm not going to scout mid right away, because I'm pretty sure if a destroyer gets spotted by the Kitakaze, that Austin is going to melt her. But Asashio's guns, while they hit pretty hard, they reload pretty slow, so if I can get a little bit of chip damage on them, and especially since they have a Asashio Lo Yang division, if I find one of them, there's a good chance I'll find both of them. And I don't want my destroyer to get wolf-packed, because that is an easy way for him to get killed. So with the Venezia, found the Marco Polo, and Yugamo, who's actually left her AA on, which is a big mistake, because now I know where she is, and I can get a pretty easy free strike in, because I don't have to worry about slowing down. Yep, there we go. Yeah, that was a big costly mistake. A lot of destroyers, as a destroyer, you have to make sure your AA is off, especially in a carrier game, because if your AA opens up, it increases the detection of your ship to your AA range. And that little mistake costs that Yugamo half his health. And that's just something, as a destroyer, you need to keep in mind. You have to be sure your AA is off at the start of the game. Because if it's not, and your AA opens up on, like, rocket planes, for example, that mistake could cost you against a good carrier player. So so we got a Friedrich and a Talon pushing midsection. Z-23 was caught in Seaside, and it looks like the enemy carrier is somewhere in the middle section. I don't necessarily want to go strike the Z-23 with torps. It's unlikely I'll hit him with any, because Hydro Destroyer and all. And honestly, our Olin shouldn't be rushing him. There is a destroyer in B that's smoking. I'm assuming... Actually, we know that's the Lo Yang. Or, yeah. Well, it could be the Asashio, I suppose. If it is the Lo Yang, she could have Hydro too. So, I'm actually going to strike the battleship that is behind her. Just because she's an easy target. And she doesn't see my planes coming until I'm right here. Turns out she might hit all three of those. And she did, and I got a flush. Unfortunately, I'm now pushing A range Talon, so I'm just going to quickly drop the torpedo, because it's unlikely that I'm going to be able to get a perfect lineup on that torpedo strike, just because of the Talon, the Venezia, the Friedrich, and whatever destroyers are in that smoke screen are probably going to prevent me from getting anything else from that. But we did get a flood. We did force a repair. That looked like an Asashio torp right there, so Asashio is probably mid-ish. So I'm going to move my carrier this way, because we can only see the Amalfi and the Z-23 at Seaside, so it looks more safe over there. A-side is fairly wide open, and I'm going to take my dive bombers on the Friedrich, because the Friedrich is actually fairly vulnerable to AP dive bombers. Most German battleships are. So I'm going to strike her, especially because if I can break like an engine or something, I know that she can't repair it because she repaired the single flood earlier, and that means that maybe one of my destroyers can get like some big damage, or a battleship can get some damage or something. RNG said no, unfortunately. Unfortunately, just the combined AA over there is really hostile, and we only got one plane off, and the bombs missed. But if we look at the minimap, you can see that both the Asashio and the Lo Yang are in fact over there, so the thought of them wolfpacking was a correct guess, and it looks like that Friedrich did actually run aground in that little channel, so maybe we can try and torp her. I'm not sure. It looks like the Benson is YOLOing her, which is kind of questionable, because it's a Hydro battleship, so not being stealthy about it. But we're going to try and torp her, just help our destroyer out as much as we can, because this is a bit of a questionable decision. I'm going to drop him here, because I'm assuming she's going to move forward to avoid the torpedoes fired by my friendly destroyer. And if she does, these torps should hit her. And it does look like she is moving forward, so those bombs should hit her pretty good. One hit, unfortunately. Unfortunately, they're kind of grouping up, so that flank is a little hard to strike. I think I might go see if I can poke my head in over at A and maybe strike the Marco Polo. Because the only support he's got is the Yugamo and the carrier. The carrier looks like he was just striking a Sashio, and the destroyer is in smoke. Is in A. Oh, our destroyer doesn't work. That's not good. Where's the Sashio, in fact? That's not ideal. We'll drop fighters for the friendly destroyer and battleship and hope that they can kill him. Yugamo was taking the cap, but unfortunately we had armor-piercing dive bombers, so nothing we could really do about that. Marco isn't super vulnerable to armor-piercing dive bombers. She's somewhat vulnerable, she's not super vulnerable. Yeah, 5 hits, only 1 Citadel. She is almost dead though, so hopefully the Friedrich can blap her real quick. She's only got a couple thousand health left. Gonna move this way. Oh, and the Friedrich died to the Asashio torps. That's unfortunate. So now it looks like we'll have to go kill Marco. unfortunately, we've lost a lot of our destroyers, just to really, really bad things. So it's not looking good for us, unfortunately. And unfortunately, as a bottom tier carrier, this is kind of the issue of, like, you don't have that much map control. Jump fighter from my friendly destroyer, although I doubt that Enterprise is going to go after her with armor-piercing dive bombers, but just so she doesn't get spotted. We'll go strike this Marco Polo, try and get him out of here. I don't know how many heals he's got left. He could heal a lot of that damage back, so we don't want that. In fact, he's found Polo Yang. I should say. One short hit on the Marco. She's turning towards the other way, so this is a bit of a mistake on her part. She should have just kept going. So now she's making it easier for me to come in and strike her again. I'm going to take the rocket planes. Oh, there's also another one. Hit the Marco. I broke something. I think it was his engine. Just based on where the torp hit, I have no idea what I actually hit, but based on where the torpedo was heading, I believe I've knocked out the Marco Polo's engines. So we're going to go over here and strike him again with rocket planes. If he repaired, then a fire will kill him. If he didn't, then he's not moving. Or he's slowing down very slowly. Unfortunately, we've lost a lot of ships on this side, so I can't really continue over here. And it looks like my Kitakaze is actually capitalizing on the fact that he just burned his repair and is actually gunboating him. So I'm actually going to hopefully kill this Yugamo, who is gunboating my Kitakaze, try and help my Kita out as much as I can. There we go. Big old hit on him.
Enemy destroyer blown up.
Now we're going to go for the Marco. Try and get him out. Because it looks like he did, in fact, repair whatever was broke. So, and he's got a perma fire on him. So another one. Ah, Islands. Islands messed us up. That's okay. I see. He should go down to the Benson, the Austin, the Kita. All of them should be able to kill him. Yep, there we go. Austin burned him to death. So I'm actually going to take my dive bombers to try and kill the Friedrich, who's coming in on my Benson. And on the way, I'm going to drop fighters over my Jean Bart to dissuade the enemy carrier from maybe striking him again. Because I'm not going to be able to prevent that strike, but I might be able to prevent the follow-up one. Which help does that Friedrich have? Oh, wow, he managed to kill a lot. Oh, that's not good. We don't want the Friedrichs to get this cap. We need the points. On top of the fact that we are down 2 caps. If we let him take this cap, we'll have no point gain, which is not good. So we want to prevent him from getting this. Ideally, we'd like to kill him, but I doubt we'll get the kill on him. The best we can do is maybe lose him. We'll come back with probably torpedo bombers. Okay, we reset the cap, come back in with torpedo bombers, and maybe try and get his repair out. And maybe let the Austin burn him down with his DPM. Jean-Bart's fighting Amalfi and Zhao. Hopefully he's got reload booster. He can blap the Zhao or the Amalfi before he gets torped, because he's most definitely being torped. And it looks like he did get a huge chunk on the Zhao. Zhao's at 96 health. There we go, he's down. I'm going to move my carrier this way. Because I do want to... I'm really far from the fight. And you can see that, like, because I had to turn around and go the long way, because the seaside was collapsing, you can see that the turnaround time is huge right now. Like, it's taking me forever to get back to this Friedrich and help our Austin. And it looks like he is going to get the cap, which is not ideal for us. But he's in a somewhat bad situation, so hopefully we can punish him for pushing like this. He's actually turning towards our Austin. If we can get a flood, that'd be really nice. And we did get a flood. And we also broke his engine too, which is huge. And you see the flames? They went away. So he has repaired that flood. He repaired the flood and the engine. That means that he no longer has his repair, and our Austin can really put some DPM in on him and maybe set a perma fire. And we actually just set a perma flood as well. So that flood will tick for the full duration. He cannot repair it. He's already used his repair, and he is now flooding. And we're going to come back in and strike him with dive bombers. And we got another incapacitation. We may have broke a gun turret or his engine. I'm not sure which one it was. It could have been either. We'll find out in a minute. Or it could have been his rudder, I suppose. We don't really know. He's got fighter cover. He's on fire. He's got a flood. He's gonna die. I'm not gonna bother, especially with those fighters there. It's not worth it. There we go. Nevsky kills him. It's better to maybe go for this Amalfi or this Talon. I don't know how much health the Amalfi has, though. So, if we can find him, there he is. He's 3/4, a little over half his health, which is not ideal. We can find the Talon. Talon is also pretty healthy. That's not good. Alright. Strike this Amalfi, try and help our Austin get as much damage as we can. The Austin does not have armor piercing, so you can only really shower this guy with sap or high explosive. So we need to be the one to do the big damage. Probably suicide if that's bad. Unfortunately, our Kitakaze decided to hunt the enemy carrier instead of capping A, which might have just thrown it. I don't know if we can kill the destroyer and the Talon and the Amalfi fast enough, we might be able to stall long enough for us to get the points to take the caps, but because they're in triple caps right now, and it looks like our cow is actually capping C, which is good, but because they're in triple caps right now, that means that we are going to lose very quickly. You can't let the enemy have triple caps. You just can't. They gain way too many points way too quickly, and it just isn't looking good for us. I'm gonna drop a fighter here for the for my friendly Austin because he is pretty low, and I'm gonna actually go for this Amalfi again because it looks like. In fact, he did drop fighters on the Talon and probably the Destroyer as well. Here. Hard, unfortunately. Okay, Austin killed the Destroyer. That's good. So I'm going to recall these planes and take the dive bombers out so I can bomb the Talon. We need to kill this guy. We need to kill him and keep the Austin alive as long as possible. Talon took a torp, that's good. Jumping my cow on. He's still somewhat healthy. Okay. Well, they traded. So I need to go take B now. I need to take B and I need to go find Amalfi. So this is a very close game. It's exceptionally close. It's 3-on-2, but they have double cap advantage. Their carrier is still alive, unfortunately. So they're probably going to win on points, unless the Nevsky can. If the Nevsky can contest A, I'm going to take B now. And as long as nobody dies, we might be able to win this. It will be close. We have to kill the Amalfi for sure, though. We can't let the Amalfi live. I know the enemy Enterprise is dropping fighters. I don't really care. I have to strike him. It doesn't matter. If I don't, we just lose. And it looks like he doesn't have enhanced reactions because if he did, my planes would already be aggroed, would already be tagged. So it looks like he doesn't have enhanced reactions, which is actually really good for me. Because it means I get that third strike off. And it means that the Amalfi is probably going to die. Either from those shells coming in, yep, and the Takao kills her. Unfortunately, our Takao is super low. Unfortunately, yeah, we're going to lose here. The Takao kind of went off on her own. We needed the Takao to stay near us, because the Takao has very bad AA. Yeah, and then we can see that she just died to the Enterprise's torpedo bombers. Takao has really bad AA, and because of that, she was just a free target for the Enterprise, and therefore we can't win because they get a huge boost of points, and we just didn't have the time to push into the caps and take it. It was not a lot we could do. We went for who we could early on, but as a bottom tier carrier, and we were still third on the team despite that. The real big issue is that I think the biggest thing that screwed us over is that our destroyer, our Kitakaze, went carrier hunting. Instead of capping A, he went for the destroyer instead. Instead of capping, he went for the carrier, and Kitakaze it's got decent AA, but it's not enough to stop an Enterprise from killing her. Especially pushing closer to the carrier means that the carrier has a much shorter turnaround time, and he just eventually died. He should have, if he was going to go for a play like that, capped and then gone for it. Because not capping means that they held on to 2 caps for a very long time, and they gained a huge points lead. And that points lead snowballed out of control. So, unfortunately, that was a loss. We tried as best as we could. We applied pressure where we could. But the enemy team was actually pretty smart and clumped up for the most part. And so that really limited who we could strike. And because they clumped up on the side we were on, unfortunately, it means that we had to fly to the other side of the map. And that made our turnaround times a lot longer. I suppose that I could have moved to the other side, the weaker side, sooner or immediately, but I didn't think that my team on that side would collapse as hard and they would deathball as hard. And that was just an unfortunate situation of I was already moving my carrier and they all grouped up. And it's just something that you have to, notice as soon as you can and move away. So, unfortunately, that game was a loss, but we came in third, so we definitely gave it our all. So that is the Enterprise. It is a very strong carrier for the tier. She can do a lot of work. So that is her. And if you like what I'm doing, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.